Hello, my name is Jeff Morris. I have written a book under my pen name R.W. Marcus. It's called The Fate of Tomorrow, and you're watching Mr. Media.
You think you know a guy. For as long as I have lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, I have been friends with Jeff Morris, the proprietor of my favorite local used bookstore and comic shop, Wilson's Book World. It's a business that was started by his mother and which he successfully continued after her for many decades. Today, Wilson's Book World continues under the third generation ownership of Jeff's daughter, Michelle Merkling Jenquin, freeing up Jeff to pursue his long-denied second career, writing pulp fantasy noir. Under the pen name of R.W. Marcus, one of St. Petersburg's favorite sons just published The Fate of Tomorrow, Tales of the Anagon Cycle, Book 1. It's the story of an unlikely group of heroic anti-heroes that combines the far-out landscapes and civilizations you might expect from Edgar Rice Burroughs with the outlandish characters of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy. I like it so much that I published it under the Mr. Media Books imprint. Book 2 is already written and expected by Christmas 2018, with the final installment of the trilogy due in 2019. I hope you'll consider ordering The Fate of Tomorrow wherever you buy or download books and enter the land of the Anagon Cycle with us. Jeff Morris, R.W. Marcus, welcome to Mr. Media.
I'm glad to be here, Bob.
Glad to have you. Always good to see you, my friend. And congratulations on The Fate of Tomorrow.
Hey, thanks.
It's very exciting. I'm excited for you, and I can't imagine kind of what it felt like to go from being a seller of other people's fantasies all these years to holding your own wild-eyed tale in your own hands.
It was interesting. I've been published, but it's nonfiction, so it really doesn't count. So this was a pretty steep learning curve, and so it was really nice. But writing it was the most fun.
Well, and let's talk about that. Was it harder? Was it easier? Or was it about what you expected?
As far as what? The writing?
Writing a novel. And I say this because you have an interesting situation. You have been a bookstore guy most of your life, I'm thinking, you've been around books. Yeah. And so you have read probably thousands of these books. You know what you like. You've recommended books to other people. And then you took this unusual route of you're actually writing your own. And I'm wondering, how did the actual experience of writing the book match up against being a reader of these books all these years?
Well, you get to control everything when you every time you read a book and you go, God, that's stupid. So I don't get to say that with mine. Other people I'm sure will.
I don't think so.
But I don't. And it was also written at a time when I was selling the building. And getting ready to retire, and really high stress. And it was a perfect, getaway for me because here was a world I could control. So just the idea of sitting down and writing it is just too much fun because I write longhand. So, and that's just something about when the pen hits the paper.
You are that guy. You are write it by longhand. You're very comfortable with that. You've been in the stacks all your life. I mean, you are a very unique fella.
Okay.
And so tell folks a little about the origins of this particular story, because as I recall, now I'm not a role-playing game guy, but this is where this all started, wasn't it?
Sure. The book is written. Well, it's going to be a trilogy of books. In every book, there are 3 acts. Okay, instead of the traditional chapter structures. So in a sense, it's a trilogy within a trilogy. The actual thing came about because of my role-playing game. I had a campaign going, which for those that don't know is one series of games leading to another. One evening of play leads to another. You don't break and start something new. And I had devised a module, which is a standalone game, to go along with my regular game, and I just fell in love with the characters, and anybody that does role playing knows, or has been a game master knows that you put an incredible amount of backstory and biographies and everything, and 6 and 5 is pick 'em as to whether your people are going to even encounter them, because in a role playing game they have free will. they could take off on a left-hand turn, and next thing you know, you've done all that work. And so I got kind of frustrated with that. Besides, I really didn't want characters to screw up, my players to screw up these characters. You know, if anybody was going to screw them up, it's going to be me.
So at some point you decided, you know what, I've gone this far. Let me go all the way with it.
Well, you know, actually, we go out to Dog Island, and I just finished cleaning up the breakfast dishes, and I was sitting out on the porch with a Bloody Mary, and I'm watching these ghost crabs run the dunes, and I'm like, I wonder what sentient sea life would be like. And that's what started. Next thing I know, I got a pad and a piece of paper, and I'm writing furiously. So that's what really started it.
You want to tell people about Dog Island? Because, you know.
It's an island off the forgotten coast up around Apalachicola. You can only get there by boat. And my girlfriend has through a deal, has acquired 2 weeks a year out there. So we can use it. And you have to take everything on, and you have to take all your garbage off, because it's a luxury beach house. It's only accessible by boat. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Good place to write, though, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're up on a second story deck. It's just beautiful scenery and nice and peace and quiet. So, yeah, it was great.
Wow. And so the world of Anakin, and you'll have to correct me. I've read the book, and of course, we give credit. My wife has been an editor on the book as well. So it's become a big part of our lives around here. Would we describe, is Anakin kind of the planet? Is that the world that they encounter?
It's the world, yeah, and the world in the title. The world really didn't have a name. And so Anakin's as good as any, you know. And so, yeah, and I got the Anakin from a Inuit moon deity. And because this is the moon is really the thing that controls the tides and everything, right? Because the planet is in a geosynchronous orbit around the sun. And so, you know, and early on, one of my betas looked at me and goes, if it's always in sun, how do they know when to tell time? How can they tell time? And I'm like, wow, that's a great question. And the moon still moves, tides. So you got these tidal clocks, which give the people what they, the humans, everybody else uses the moon. So if you're in the middle of the light side of the planet, then you never see the moon. So you need some way to tell time.
And there are these two parts to the world. There's Nocturne and Lumina.
Lumina, right?
So explain how that works.
Well, basically, the light side is just that, and then as you get towards the edges, you have the twilight areas, which of course you've got warm air and cool air meeting, so it's very stormy in these areas. And then you go over to the dark side. And the dark side isn't completely dark. It's not pitch black. You have bioluminescence. You have the stars. And when the moon comes up, they treat the moon just like we treat the sun. When we have moonrise over on Nocturne, that's the equivalent of their day, and it's like a dusky twilight.
And it's the Khan, right?
That's another part of that's just the central islands in Lumina where the humans mostly live. At the geothermal things, when the moon goes away, the actual fog rises from the sea, and it's very dense, and that in a sense acts as their night.
And it changes everything. No matter what you're doing, you are totally affected by it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's when, the nefarious people come out, it's because, they got under cloak of not darkness, but under cloak of fog. Yeah.
And we were talking before the interview started. We both have this love of John Carter, Warlord of Mars, and you're a big Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. Are there other influences that people could pick up, or that you would like them to pick up?
Whenever I have to introduce myself at a con or anything like that, I always say that my style is very much like if Edgar Rice Burroughs and Quentin Tarantino collaborated, because you got the weird, wacky characters and the crazy situations, all wrapped up in a John Carter-ish kind of, I just love that pulp stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really, and sometimes I feel bad when I go to these conventions because most of the people that write, that I hang out with are literature people, so they're writing these beautiful prose, and I'm writing about people getting their heads chopped off, so it's just a little bit weird.
And yeah, there is some real cartoonish violence that's kind of Tarantino-like, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I know that what really drew me to the book, and this is not my genre. I love my comic books. I like detective fiction. I like certain sci-fi, but I was never this genre. This just wasn't my thing. So I wasn't sure when I got picked up the original version of the book. I thought, well, I don't know, but I'll try. It's Jeff. I want to know what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I love the characters in this book.
Yeah,
And I just and what I was hoping is I picked out the four that I think are the main characters,
mm-hmm.
and what I wanted to ask you to do was to kind of describe them as best you can to the audience, so they can get a sense of
Okay.
what they're about. And the first one we're introduced to, of course, is Sham Elder.
Right.
So,
Black sheep of the family, royal. He's the youngest son. He would much rather be carousing, drinking, and chasing women, and light larceny. He's not really a thief by nature, but he's a smart ass. He's very much an elitist. He's got his royal blood in him, and even though he's the black sheep of the family, it's those people kind of.
And his buddy, Captain Mallory, Mal.
Mal, yeah, they were former lovers. Very short, very brief period of time. They kind of hang out in the book. He actually hires her because of her underworld contacts, and that's where the book starts, is on her ship. And she's what's called a spice rat. She's a smuggler, and she's got a hot temper, and she's got a bit of a potty mouth, and she's no nonsense.
Hard as nails.
Hard as nails. But, she's got her soft side, too, as when the next character, I imagine, would be Alto.
Right. Yep.
When he comes along, he brings out more of her soft side. He's a sword master. Kind of like in the Iaido style of draw and strike was what I was kind of thinking of with him. And I wanted to set up a thing of varying sword schools and their competition, which came out in the second act of the book. And so he's very honorable. He speaks very formally. In fact, several times people go, "Does he always talk like this?" So yeah.
He's my favorite in the book. We've talked about this, and I think I mentioned this to you, and I know even my wife gives me a funny look when I mention this, but to me, he's like Puss in Boots in the Shrek movies.
Oh,
played by Antonio Banderas. He's a whiz with the knives. And he can just he can cut someone to pieces. If he was Zorro, he'd be putting a Z in their in their chest. And he's very formal, and yet he's got his code that he follows. I love that character. I think I would read an entire book just about that character.
We got stuff coming up. I'm definitely got something beyond the trilogy going. So yeah.
All right, and then the fourth one that I picked out was Soshi, who is very unique. Tell people about Soshi.
She is what's called an oldai, which means she ingests. She's an addict. She's also a spy for the Amarenians, which are a race of female pirates. And she's what's called a secret sister, and they put them in all over the Goyan Islands to just keep an eye on things. And she has become an addict of what's called old dust, and old dust would probably be think of a combination of a hallucinogenic and this magical ability to transport you to other places and give you powers. And she does this when she's having sex. And so she's not just a prostitute; she's an information broker on the street, because I made up this term called orgasmic memory extraction. So all she has to do is have sex with you, and she knows everything about you. And so that she became very, very powerful, and because she's knowledgeable, and people like her because especially the second level business guys and second level royalty or whatever, because she doesn't ask prying questions. She didn't have to, so they love her.
Yeah.
So, and so she gets quite a bit in there too. And then the next book, we've got another addition to the team.
Yeah, I have a question I want to ask about Sochi, but I won't because we're in a spoiler-free zone here, so I will
Oh,
not
right,
ask about Sochi.
right.
Did you have to do much research for this
No,
book, or is it all coming from,
that's why I love fantasy, is because, my motto now is never let reality stand in the way of a good story. I mean, yes, there are certain things I researched, like, well, especially for the second book, there are groups of sentient wolf men, not werewolves, but actually wolf men.
Mhm.
So I actually had to research, how do wolf packs work? And what's the hierarchy and all that kind of stuff. There's also a part in the second book about deserts. So okay, how do oases work?
Mhm.
That kind of stuff. So yeah, some, but nothing compared to, nobody's going to be able to go, oh, well. And that's the part I love about it. It's like, this is fantasy. All I have to be is consistent.
Mhm. Now, there were, in terms of the narrative, there were certain twists that I didn't see coming at times. Partly, I think, because it is fantasy,
Hmm.
and you call it pulp noir fantasy,
Fantasy pulp noir, yes.
fantasy pulp noir.
Hmm.
Um, is it how do you plot the stories? Now, as we're talking, you're working on the third book, so you've had enough experience at this. I
The
trust that you
third
can
book is
talk about
proved
it.
the third book has proved even more problematic, simply because I've got all these story arcs from two books before to tie up. So on my porch, I've got this huge, big board and all these post-it notes all over the place. I'm almost done outlining Act One of the third book,
Hmm.
but sometimes I would go into it, and honestly, I know these characters so well, they actually dictated what happened.
Hmm.
How would they act? What would they do? And that actually got me out of a bunch of writing jams just doing that.
Do you know? Did you know when you began where the series would end at the end of the
When I
third
began,
book?
now,
So they
I,
literally are taking you for a ride.
yeah, they were taking me for a ride, absolutely. But now, I mean, towards the end of the first book, I knew where the third one was going to end.
Um, the first book, which is where I'm at. I haven't gotten. I know my wife has book two to edit, even as we're
Yeah.
sitting here. Um, did you intend it? Did you visualize it as being very cinematic, very something that could be, on a screen of some kind, or was that just coincidental?
No, my basic, I did two types of writing before. In a semi-professional manner, I wrote ad copy, which is where the name R.W. Marcus came from. That was my name, my pen name for when I was writing ad copy. And my writing partner and I at the time, that was what we did with screenplays.
Hmm.
So basically, boy, that was an eye-opening experience. I tell you what. But yeah, and I tend to think in terms of, like, because the whole nature of the book isn't chapter driven, it's scene driven.
Hmm.
And so, which makes it really hard to read at open mics and cons too. So,
I can see
but
that.
that's okay. That's just the way I think.
And Jeff, did you always want to be a writer, or is that something that came along
Yeah,
later?
kind of always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I never, and I poked around at it, but that once I said I'm retiring, this is gonna be this is my first serious stab at fiction. So this was like all in for me here.
Hmm. We should mention. I mean, your other book. It's the Ship of Fools to 1500.
Yeah.
Nonfiction. What is that about? What?
Well, my field is called incunabula, which is a big fancy word for the first 50 years of printing. So that's Gutenberg at 1450 to 1500. Printed material. That's the printing process.
Mhm.
That was my specialty. And there was this book that came out back in 1496, and it was called The Ship of Fools, and it was 113 chapters, very short poetry with a woodblock, and each one of them was a vice and folly of mankind. And I just thought they were charming. We had gotten some leaves in, and thought this is kind of cool. So I started compiling notes into where the various editions were, and one of the publishers. And as you can imagine, the field is small. One of our publishers contacted Dr. Griffon, who I was working with, and said, "Hey, we hear your guy is doing this. We'll publish it."
Hmm.
So it was like, "Oh, okay." So at that point, that became a full blown. So yeah.
I remember when you got into that, you were so excited.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super dry. You really got to be into it. I mean, museums may buy one, auction houses in order to be able to identify the different editions, but yeah, it's nothing anybody's going to just buy and read.
Right, but I mean, it definitely gave you a taste for being published
Oh,
and
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
set the table for what's since come.
right.
Um, so you write longhand.
Hmm.
You write long. I mean, the books are like 100,000 words. I
Yeah.
think. Um, did you have any training in school or along the way? Did you read any books about writing?
Well, the usual stuff you had to read in high school, elements of style, that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
the lively art of writing, but nothing particular, no.
And who are some other authors that you favored, whether fantasy or not?
I really like the Robert Anton Wilson Illuminatus trilogy. Um, Mark Danielowski, I think I'm pronouncing that last name right, called House of Leaves. That was just to me brilliant. The usual other stuff, I've read a smattering, but I don't read more than one of an author as a general rule. Like I've read a Tom Clancy book. I read a Louis L'Amour book. I tried reading two Louis L'Amour books because the one was really good, but the second book was just like the first. It was like, wow, we got the same protagonist, but he got a different name. So there just wasn't enough variation, So like I said, I read one of just about everybody.
Hmm. And so I want to just change gears a little bit before we
Sure.
kind of wind down. I talked in the introduction about how you basically, I think, grew up in the used bookstore. Your mother started the store, right?
Correct.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was in a what used to be the original store was in an automotive showroom.
No, the one we had now is an automotive showroom.
Oh,
Yeah, the one we started with was in 535, so it was like down the street. It's a parking lot now.
oh,
It's
okay.
across
So
from the Nova 535. It's across we've been across the street from there.
oh, so
Uh,
there's been three locations.
Now there's been three locations. Yes.
Okay, but the one that I know you from
Uh,
on with ML Martin Luther
yeah.
King Street in St. Pete,
Right.
that was an automotive showroom, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a Chrysler dealership.
Right, because it was actually Michelle. I didn't know this from you. Michelle actually showed me how the doors would the front the big glass windows they actually slid out so
Yeah.
people could drive cars in and out.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the second. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. So what was it? What was it like growing up basically in a used bookstore in a bookstore?
Um, I could read anything I wanted. It was great. My parents didn't care.
Hmm.
Oh, it was one of those deals that, and I didn't feel the need. That's why I really didn't feel the need to go to college because why? I mean, if I'm interested in it, I can read it.
Good
You know,
point.
so, I had a humorous thing. I was standing in the kitchen once and my mom comes in and she goes, I think I can get your dad to pay for college. I'm like, wow, that's great. I always wanted to study philosophy. And she goes, oh no, no, he won't pay for that.
That's great.
So, I was like, all right, okay, I guess I'm going to work at the bookstore.
Wow. Well, your mom saved you a life of aggravation, I suspect, there.
It also saved me a bunch because in junior high school, I had a big mouth and nothing to back it up with. Okay. And I would have like groups of bullies looking for me. And I'd sometimes take 2, 3 weeks off of school and I'd be at the bookstore working. And I remember one day my geography teacher walked through the door and I'm like, oh, busted. And he walked over, talked to my mom for a little bit, and he comes over to me and he goes, "Look, I'm not gonna tell on you." He says, "I am gonna fail you because you haven't been there." He said, "But what you're doing now is what kids used to do when they couldn't go to school. They worked with their family."
Hmm.
He said, "So I'm not there. I shouldn't punish you for that."
Very
So
nice.
that was kind of neat.
That's nice. And then, last thing on this regard, what's it like? I mean, you've passed the store on to Michelle.
Hmm.
I believe you take a great deal of pride in the fact that you've been able to continue this kind of
Sure.
family thing that way. And did you ever anticipate that this would be the situation now?
I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I am with anything in life. I am always guardedly optimistic. And this was one of those things I was pushing for. I had had the building up for sale for years,
Hmm.
secretly, quietly. And then they took my offer, which was stupid money. It was really seriously stupid money. Um, but over the years, it became the way St. Pete's been growing. It became less and less stupid.
Right.
And so finally, this last year, beginning 2018, when they said, "Hey, we got a buyer," I go, well, "I guess I'm retiring." So there you go.
And so Michelle wanted to keep it going, though.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh
that's
yeah.
great. And I think, in fairness, what's the address of the new store location, just so everybody knows?
535 16th Street North.
Yeah, it's a nice shop. She's got a nice operation. She's doing it. She's continuing this family operation, third generation, right?
Third generation, yep.
Basically, and just got her own thing going. It has its own look and its own feel, and it's a very nice, I think.
And I am loving retirement.
Yeah, like you've been retired because you take it easy. You've been busy. You're always busy.
I'm always busy, but now, I don't have that, when you own a building, when you own commercial property, I was a terrible landlord. I was way too nice a guy, and so I don't have that burden on me. And that is just like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. Plus, I think if I heard the term underwriter one more time, I was going to go on a 3-state killing spree.
Well, I'm glad we've all been saved that.
Yeah, really.
So back to the book, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
What have you learned from book 1 through book 3? What are you doing differently with book 3 from book 1? And is the writing process, is any of it going quicker for you because you've done it twice already?
The writing process is going quicker. My prose, I like to think, is getting sharper. Everybody a lot of my betas that read the first part, when they hit the second act, they go, "Oh, okay, you're hitting your stride here." And so I think with the second book, all my betas just raved over it. They said, "Oh, this is the best one yet." So I'm guardedly optimistic. But yes, it's gotten progressively easier, and I've got my routine now down. In the evening, I'll pour a scotch, head out to the front porch, right away till about 10, 11 o'clock. Get to bed. When I get up in the morning, I'm fresh. I put into the computer what I just wrote the other night, and I repeat the process.
Excellent. I think it's great. Folks, listen, you can order Jeff Marcus's Jeff. See now doing it. Jeff Morris's. The two names are so close. Jeff Morris's first novel, The Fate of Tomorrow, written under his pen name, R.W. Marcus, wherever great books are sold, or you can order it right now at a great price at MrMedia.com. If you are looking, if you're watching this video on MrMedia.com, just below the video you'll see the cover of the book. You can click on it. It'll take you to Amazon. You can download the ebook immediately, or you can get the paperback version of the book, have it delivered, I don't know, like an hour, I think, with their drone delivery service. It's something like that. It's some crazy.
And if you're local, I'll probably just bring it to your own house.
Oh God! Don't promise that, Jeff.
Just kidding.
Oh my God! Everybody's going to want that. Okay, and then you've got a website for the book.
AnniganCycle.com.
ANNIGAN cycle.com.
Yep.
And you're on Twitter and Facebook, I believe?
I am. Yes, all those things, even though I'm admittedly just terrible at self-promotion.
Well,
terrible.
That's what we're trying to help you with today.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
But now it's important, though, on Facebook and Twitter, how do they find you? What name?
Well, I'm under Jeff Morris is fine. I have a page that's R.W. Marcus that you can get to, via, I guess, well, I'm not sure how that works, but there are both.
Okay, folks, you can search for either one.
Yeah.
And I think on Twitter, there's an R.W. Marcus.
Noir. Marcus. Noir. Put Noir. Yeah, okay. Just because somebody's Skyped the name ahead of me.
How dare they?
Bastards.
How dare they? Well, listen, Jeff Morris, my friend, it's so much fun to see you doing this and enjoying this and doing well at it. And thanks so much for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it.
To believer, turn up the stereo receiver.